Okay, we should be live. Okay, with us we have Lucien. Lucien has got quite the wild story and some very good insight, both on Islam and on Christianity. These are very hot topics these days, extremely relevant to, well, wherever you live in the world today, to be frank. I mean, people all the way from Australia to the US and on are dealing with Islamic encroachment, if that sounds fair enough. So, without further ado, welcome, Lucian. Would you like to tell us a little about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Lucien, birth name Abdiftah Usman, i.e., aka Slave of the Conqueror. Was my name. I was a Muslim for 35 years until last month when I don't know why I was doing, it was an Islam Q&A, and I wrote child bride, and I saw the verse, sort of 65, verse 4, regarding the Idda period. It's the period where 3 months you have to wait for a divorce to make sure your wife isn't pregnant, and that included prepubescent girls. And that's when I realized that Islam allows pedophilia in the Quran and the Sunnah. And I morally couldn't accept that. And at that moment, I knew that Allah wasn't God, because no God will allow a child to be violated in such a way. So I left Islam. And then I was never going to be an atheist, because I look at the world and I look at humans, I look at animals and nature, and I intrinsically know that there's a creator behind all this. So I was never going to be an atheist, nor was I ever going to be a polytheist. So Hinduism and Buddhism, all that was out of the picture. I looked into Christianity and I realized that Yahweh created us out of love. He wanted us to know of His love and share it with us. That He created us, and that is such a departure for Islam, where Muslims are slaves, created to submit to Allah. So in Islam, you're nothing more a slave, but in Christianity, God loves you, and He created you to know that love, which is beautiful. And as Christians, we have a covenant with God. We're not slaves. And that spoke to me, and I felt it in my heart that I never had, that Jesus died for my sins on the cross and rose on the third day. And it's hard to explain to somebody that's not been a Muslim before. When you enter Christianity, you feel in your heart that this is the truth. Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite the contrast. It's quite the comparison too that you've just illustrated. It's quite significant. But there are plenty of people, plenty of naysayers that would deny or denounce your claims just now, especially when it comes to Islam and its sexualizing children. Um, what would you say to those people? How would you correct them?
Well, I would simply say read Surah 65, verse 4, and then read the tafsir of Ibn Kathir, where he specifically states, and those who have not yet menstruated. And then I would go to the Sunnah and look at the hadith when Aisha says she married Muhammad at age 6 and consummated at 9. So even the leader of Islam was a pedophile. So it's in their own sources, it's irrefutable. That's what I would say.
Okay. So for those who are not familiar, when you say Surah 65:4, that's actually from the Quran itself.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. It's in the sources, it's in the Quran and the Hadith. Yeah.
All right. So I've got reading from that from Quran.com, which I know takes some liberties when it comes to its translations into English, but let's give it a shot. It says, and this is Sahih International, which is the highest grade. But again, let's see what the translation says.
Hmm.
And and those who no longer expect menstruation among your women, if you doubt, then their period is 3 months. and also for those who have not menstruated. And for those who are pregnant, their term is until they give birth. And whoever fears Allah, He will make for him of his matter ease. Okay, so I mean, I've already heard this over and over again, more correct translations and analysis and so on. But even if I didn't know anything about that, when you read this, it's pretty obvious that there's some kind of language problems here.
Well, I will send you, I will, so that's Surah 65, verse 4, right? But
Yes.
when you write Tafsir, let me tell you the website, it comes up, and it actually gives you a breakdown of the exegesis of the verse. And let me see if I can send it to you here. If it's got a chat option, copy that, and it shows you exactly, because like they are really sugarcoating it right there. And
Oh, yeah.
they are okay.
They butchered it really with the mistranslations. I mean, it doesn't even make any sense.
Okay, is there any way for me? I pressed chat, but
Okay. Let's see. There on your bottom screen, there should be an option to share screen, or do you have those options?
I see share screen. Yeah.
Or you can just email it to me and I can share it.
So I'm going to share this. See, this one here. Share that one.
Okay.
So if I go down,
Let me highlight that.
okay.
All right.
So let me go down and I'll show you that the same for the young who have not reached the year's administration. Do you see that there?
Yes.
Yeah. And then he goes down further. This is where he gives the explanation here. Where is it? When he says the Allah the Exalted and okay, where is it again? Okay. There's a place where he says Allah the Exalted. That's really good. Oh, well, let me go back up. But yeah, basically it states, as we saw there, that those who have not ministrated yet. And so yeah, basically that means young children, right?
Mhm.
Girls who have not had the period yet, which is, to me, it's disgusting.
Yeah. So on that note, in the Quran.com, horribly mistranslated, butchered version, it says the period is 3 months. So I mean, if you're not understanding what it's trying to say, you might read that as well. They have a 3 month long period. They have some kind of blood issue. I mean, what is it really saying there?
Okay, so what the iddah period is the 3 months that you have to wait to ensure the woman isn't pregnant before you divorce her. It's the waiting stage. And Allah the Exalted clarifies the waiting period of the woman in menopause, and that's the one whose menstruation has stopped due to her older age. Iddah is 3 months instead of the 3 month cycles. For those who menstruate, which is based upon the ayah, Surah Al-Baqarah 2, Surah 2, verse 228, the same for the young who have not reached the years of menstruation. The iddah is 3 months like those in menopause. So what iddah period is basically, it's a woman that you're wanting to divorce. Let me stop sharing this. It's a woman that you want to divorce, and there's a 3 month waiting period to make sure that she's not pregnant.
Okay.
That she's not pregnant, and before she marries somebody else. And also, this is a very important part. There is no iddah period if there's been no consummation. So yeah,
Right.
yeah,
That is a very, very important part.
yeah,
So what you're saying is, like Clinton said, have sexual relations. If you don't have sexual relations, then there is no worry of being pregnant.
exactly.
All right. So, and that was definitely an eye opener for you. Like, okay, wait a minute. There's definitely even the Quran, but also um, scholarly uh, discussion or proof that pedophilia is not only existent in Islam, but it's being promoted and taught.
Well, it's allowed. Are you aware of the recent Din al-Haqiqatu and inspiring philosophy debate?
No, everyone keeps referencing it, but I missed that. Yeah. So please fill me in.
Also, Daniel Hakika to basically expose Islam for what it is. He goes all the way down to age 4 is okay to marry, and then when you reach age 3, he goes, now it no longer becomes feasible. And they
What a
basically,
swell guy, right?
yeah, and he's saying that he's saying that it's better for it's better for a grown man to marry a young child instead of a young child having sexual needs and sleeping with another child, a 10-year-old, so another 10-year-old. And I'm watching this and I'm going, I remember when I was 10, I had no sexual needs.
Right.
It
And I
was,
was playing with my GI Joes.
yeah, it wasn't even in my head at the age 10.
Right.
That happened as I became a teenager, so that's a lie. And he said, isn't it better for them to be married instead of satisfying, you know what? As wrong as it sounds, I'd rather a 10-year-old sleep with another 10-year-old than a 45-year-old man. That is, if there were two options, I'd rather two 10-year-olds be with each other than a 10-year-old and a 45-year-old man. And he's saying that's the better option of the two. And also, funny enough, at the beginning of the video, he makes a disclaimer saying, I live in America where this is not legal. This is not an endorsement for pedophilia or encouraging anybody to perform, because he has to do it, because his position is illegal in America and the rest of the civilized world. But these da'is, like David Wood always says, they're doing all the work for us, these Muslim da'is. They're exposing Islam themselves. Like Muhammad Hijab and Ali Dawah recently had a video where they're talking about seeking second wives. Do you see that?
I saw a clip of it. I think it was just recently, a day or two ago.
Yeah, and you go, wow, you can just blatantly lie to your wife and have a secret second wife. That's what we would call in English vernacular a side chick. It's what people would call,
Yeah, side dish. Yeah. Yeah. So the clip that I saw, they were discussing how, basically, it was kind of like they were kind of forcing the woman to choose. Well, you either accept it and it's going to be out in the open, or we're just going to do it anyway and you won't know about it. But it's you're just going to have to deal with it anyway, regardless whether you know about it or not. Does that sound about right? Is that your
Yes,
understanding?
yes, that's what it is. And the women, all of the women, not one of them was into it. Some of them were outright no, 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 no. And one of them said, if I was asked, I wouldn't be happy about it. And that was the woman that was happy of all of them. And like Muhammad Hijab was saying, that because they live in the West, that the wives might want to have revenge upon you if you try to get a second wife and take away your children. So the preferable option is just to have a second secret wife.
Mm.
And I go, yeah.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of people that are saying, well, that's a conspiracy theory. Islam is really good to women and so on. And you see a lot of women, lining up, or at least according to media, women are lining up to become Muslims. But so, what do you say to that, people? I remember not too long ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, there was someone in New England, in the northeast of the United States. I think it was Vermont, actually. They were going around putting up a sign or a little poster that said, Islam is right about women. And that created an uproar, naturally. And so you had all these people that we call the left. I call them mass media monies, because left, right, we're all, victims of mass media and its conditioning. But they couldn't quite figure it out. They didn't know how to respond to it. They were like, and the person who complained about it, who turned this person in and so on, and made the news, and they were interviewing her, and she said, well, I don't know what to make of it. Is it trying to say something about women? Is it trying to say something about Islam? I don't know, but it's just horrible. Like, okay, how's it horrible? What is it saying? So yeah, I mean, there's also, I believe, it's a hadith. I'm not sure. It's been a while since I've seen it, but it's definitely a dictate that states, treat your woman as well as your animals. Does that sound familiar to you?
No, not that one.
No.
No,
Okay. Yeah.
that one. No. There's so many of them. So you know. But there's one that I know. Don't beat your wives like you beat your slave.
All right. Is that the
That is,
toothbrush one?
yeah, that's a lot of them, you know. But that one is what, and then the question is, well, then how am I supposed to beat my wife then? You're telling me not to beat her like a slave. How am I supposed to beat her then? You know.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's a two-parter. That obviously shows that Islam is promoting slavery.
And it promotes slavery. Also, in the Quran, it tells you how to deal with your wife. It says, at first, if she doesn't listen, you have a conversation. The second step is the separation of beds. And then, even then, she doesn't listen to you, beat her. The third step is beating her. So, the beating is endorsed in the Quran itself and in the Sunnah as well. So, you know, and also, are you aware that, let's say, for example, my father is wealthy and he dies tomorrow. My sister will only get half the inheritance that I will get, based solely upon her being a woman. No other factors behind it. She's a woman, so she gets half, because she's worth half of me based because she's a woman. This is
Wow.
Islam, right? And also, a lot of women in the West are becoming Muslim now because they're told, you see how a Muslim women dress, and you see how all these naked girls on Instagram and TikTok and all that. It's because we respect and value our women. We're not going to degrade you, and it's bringing a lot of women to Islam, you know. But if you dig deeper into it, the reason why Muslim women are supposed to dress the way they're dressed is not to catch the lustful stares of men and potentially get raped. So they're saying it's for their protection that they're. But
Right.
these women don't know the religion, so they don't go. And also, I used to be, like I said yesterday, I used to be part of Tablighi Jamaat, and they go all over the world and
Mm.
tell, and I'll spell it for you as well. They go all over the world and tell Muslims to come back to the religion, but they're also called Christians into the religion. But when they do that, they never tell them um, the laws and punishments of Islam. It's all about paradise, paradise, paradise. And if you don't become Muslim, you go to hell. So if you want to write it down, it's spelled T-A, I don't know if you have a pen. Because,
Okay.
okay. So they're spelled T-A-B-L-I-G-H-I,
Mhm.
and then a space, a second word, a J-A-M-A-A-T. And they have their own Wikipedia page as well.
Yeah.
And they go all over the world, and they bring Muslims back to the faith, telling them to practice it correctly, and they also preach Christians, but they never tell them the punishments of Islam and the things that you know, they only give them, they only give them the carrot and not the stick, basically.
Right. Until it's too late. Once they're displaced, they leave their own family, their own friends, their own country, even, and they're completely dependent on strangers trying to take advantage of them. All of a sudden, they're completely at their mercy, and so now the cat's out of the bag. They can do and say
Yeah.
whatever they want.
I watched a woman being interviewed by Stephen Crowder. I watched her recently. The interview was years ago, and I was watched it. And she was an American woman that became Muslim. And a lot of these women, by the way, become Muslim because their boyfriend or their husband is a Muslim, right? And she became a Muslim, married a Muslim. And then when she wanted to leave, she was well aware that she couldn't leave very easily, and her husband was Asian. And what they tend to do is if the wife leaves, they take their kids and they take them with them to Pakistan, and the woman never sees the kids again. So she went, we're going on holiday to my mother's house, we'll be back. And she never came back because she couldn't just tell him we're leaving. He would have taken the kids and they would have gone abroad, So you have to be
Yeah.
very careful.
That's really heartbreaking. The whole I mean, the human trafficking is not only um, in Islam, but it's definitely a major problem with Islam. Um, yeah. So, what would you say to those people that say that's not true? That I mean, I haven't really met anyone. Even Muslims will openly admit that. Yeah, okay, slavery is part of Islam. For example, with the R word, the RAPE word, we can't say on Yubu because I don't know, we can't. It's
What a lot of YouTubers call it, they call it grape instead. Grape.
grape.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh boy, I don't know if I feel good about that or not. But all right,
Yeah,
yeah, this whole self censorship thing is a whole issue and discussion itself.
yeah. It's just a way to navigate demonetization. Some words you can't say.
Yeah,
Yeah,
in my region, I'm not allowed to monetize anyway. So if that's the only issue, then I don't care. But I've already been flagged. They've already been threatened.
we'll just say the word rape then. That's you know. But
Right? Really? Okay.
yeah, what because that's what it is. I don't like to trivialize what it is, but that's what it is. Because
Yeah.
I was talking to a guy in Clubhouse, and he told me it isn't rape. I said, how isn't it rape when these men have finished killing their husbands and their brothers, and now they're taking them sexually with the blood still dripping off them? How is that not rape?
Yeah. You mentioned that yesterday too. I mean, that's
Yeah,
just.
but literally, this guy was trying to say it wasn't rape, and I went, it is rape, and it's rape in the worst way because you just finished killing the men of the village or city or whatever, and this is only the Muslims who are willing to admit it. A lot of them will go no, even if they know. But a lot of them don't know. So when you tell a lot of Muslims, the reason why they say that's not what it says is because they don't know. Like they don't. A lot of them don't know. Like my own nurse that comes to see me, nurse that comes to see me regularly. Yesterday I told her regarding Surah 65 verse 4, and she was disgusted. She didn't want to hear it. She says, "Young children." And I told her, if it disgusts you, then I implore you to leave Islam because it allows it. And you'd be surprised the amount of Muslims that don't know their own religion.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that too. But before we change subject,
Mhm.
let me play the devil's advocate here and challenge you with those who would say, well, yeah, well, Christians engage in that too. What about the Catholic priests who molest little children? Um, what would you say to those people that make those
Well,
kinds of claims?
as a somebody waiting for the RCA into the Catholic Church, I'll simply say this. What those men did is pure evil, but is not condoned by the church itself. That's the difference. Sexual slavery is allowed in the Quran. It says, those who are, your wives and those your right hand possesses. So it's even in a hadith where the men of Quraysh the men would not sleep with some women, and the Prophet said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "They have husbands." And then the surah came, Allah has made your wives and whatever your right hand possesses lawful for you. So the difference is, Islam has allowed it in their religious text. In the Catholic Church, it's not allowed, but unfortunately, you have perverts in every group. So I'd say that's the difference. The Catholic does not allow it. Islam allows it.
Yeah, I mean, it's condoned. In Christianity, it's a sin. And
Yes,
there's those that are getting away with it, and they're
yes.
getting away with it because it goes against the faith. And hopefully they get caught and get dealt with, which does happen.
And also, unfortunately, I think people are waking up now. But even back in the, you know about the Spotlight scandal, right? You see the movie
The
Spotlight?
movie, right? They made a
Yeah,
movie about it, right?
great movie. I watched it, and years before I was ever Christian, and watched the movie. But even as a Muslim, see, I never blamed the Catholic Church. I'm able to separate the organization from the people.
Right.
Like, and a lot of people can't do that. And what I saw when I watched it, I said, yeah, these are just perverts, and every organization has perverts. You know,
Right.
yeah. But in Islam, it's allowed, it's condoned.
Okay. So to kind of expand on the point that you just made, there's there's a disconnect between the people and the organization. Well, how can that be if people create an organization and manage it and so on? It's kind of like this. When we look at auto mechanics, now there's definitely mechanics out there that are corrupt that might do things that intentionally sabotage your vehicle so you can bring it back or they can charge you extra or whatever. That exists. But does that mean that we now have to not trust the auto mechanic industry altogether, or that the auto mechanic industry is out to do that, nothing but that, or something that effect? I mean, should we not have cars anymore because there's some bad apples? So that's the case with Christianity in this example specifically. Now, there could be an argument made about its celibacy policy or not, whether or not it's stated or whether or not it's an issue. But with that being said, you got to realize that that's an isolated problem that does get dealt with differently, that is against the faith. And also, when it comes to that behavior, there was a peak for that kind of behavior in the 70s. Now, I'm not excusing it, but to your point, I want to draw the comparison and help people realize that this kind of behavior was not only at a peak in the 70s in the Catholic Church, but at least in America as a whole. I mean, for crying out loud, we had the porn industry out in the middle of New York, thousands or millions of people walking by, being exposed to pornographic imagery because people just went off the deep end sexually after the Cultural Revolution of the 60s.
Yeah. Sex, rock and roll, right?
Right,
Sex,
exactly.
rock and roll, and a lot of that's a very apt saying. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? So I tell a lot of people because a lot of people, I listen to a guy named Father Mike. He's got a podcast, Bible in a Year, and I listen to that, and he talks about how a lot of people left the Catholic Church because of the scandals. And I always go to people, you don't leave. The good people are meant to stay there and fight the bad. And I just urge people. It's what the people it's what the Muslims to become atheists. They do the same thing. Because Allah is evil, they just assume God is evil. And I always tell them, Allah is not God. It's like, I love to watch Nuria Khan, Harris Sultan, Apostate Prophet. But all of them became atheist. Because they left the evil of Islam and they just assume, well, God is evil. And I just want to tell people, Allah is not God. Don't throw away God because of Allah. Don't make that mistake.
Yeah, we got a good question from Mary Alex here. She's posing a very thoughtful question, actually. Why do they give up so easily?
You mean the Muslims to become atheist?
Right.
Because once, this is how I can explain it the best way. That's like a veil lifted, right? When you stop believing in Islam and realize there was never an Allah, and all there was Muhammad. There is no Allah. It's Muhammad. He's a faker. The Bible warns us of false prophets, right?
Long story short, huh?
Yeah. And what happens is, because they see the truth about Islam, the slavery, the punishments, the pedophilia, they come away with the conclusion that God is evil and leave. But the fundamental mistake they make is Muhammad is not God. Right? Allah is not God. Yahweh is God. So they throw away God. So what I would say to those people is, throw away the false God, but come to Jesus. Come to Yahweh, and you will feel like you've never felt in your life before. Like you will actually feel the Holy Spirit in your heart, which I can tell you never feel as a Muslim. You never do.
Amen. Yeah. And Mary's definitely echoing your sentiments, and I would completely agree with that. I think scripturally it states, once you've had the taste of grace, there's no turning back, which is quite a bold statement to make, but if you've lived it, if you've experienced that taste of grace, if you have the moment where you realize that not only do you have a direct relationship with God, but He even cares about the slightest thing about you, about whether or not a single hair on your head is harmed, type of thing. It becomes overwhelming realization. Um, it can be quite moving and transformative.
Yeah, it's especially like Mary has said testimonies, especially when you leave Islam and you go to Christianity. It's when you really feel it, because you lived. When I was a Muslim, there was always a lot of doubts. I would always ask my parents. I would go because I had a recurring thought in my head that I wake up on the day of judgment and I'm told you're worshiping the wrong God and you're going to hell. And I'm screaming, Allah, Allah, Allah. There's no Allah. And I'm going to hell. And I always had those doubts in me, always, right? And also even Muhammad himself, I was never that close to because of the whole Aisha situation of marrying a 6-year-old girl, right? But I don't have those doubts now with Christianity because I know that God wanted to share His love with us, so He created us out of love. And that is such a difference when you come from being a slave and you feel it in your heart. And also becoming Christian took me away from so many bad sins I was committing when I was a Muslim.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, Mary. So you're kind of touching on something that I've been observing quite a lot with these Christian apologist channels and the Muslims I visit, and they come on debate or even in the chat. You know, you watch them, and after a while, you realize that they're completely lost. I'm not trying to be ugly here, but they're genuinely, like I said, they don't even realize their own religion. They don't realize our religion, so to speak. They don't realize the truth, and they're therefore lacking. They're completely missing out on this. I mean, experience that's beyond words, and it's quite tragic. It's sad, and they didn't even realize it.
No,
It's heartbreaking.
yeah, and you watch them try to defend Islam, and then they're shown all the contradictions and they can't defend it. So they have certain fallback positions. It's either whataboutism or what about the Bible, or they just got straight attacking and swearing at you. Like Thaddeus was saying yesterday, that he felt like the devil had a part of the stream yesterday because there was a lot of vitriol. And see, Muslims don't like you leaving Islam, but they don't mind it too much if you become an atheist. Is when you become a Christian, they become incensed.
Yeah.
That's when you really, really anger them when you become a Christian. You know?
Yeah, and that's I encourage those who haven't seen David Amadek's Muslim, his stream and his work. He was interviewed. Where was it? I think it was on Sham's channel. I can't remember. But he was talking about his conversion. Actually, it's quite profound. At a young age, he became Muslim, but he was also indoctrinated into a terrorist group at a young age, and so it was all theoretical and so on and so forth. But when the activity started happening, when the terrorism, when people were getting butchered and decapitated and so on, and he was witnessing this, all of a sudden it jarred him. Like it was like, whoa, wait a minute, this is real. Um, and thankfully, instead of giving into this bloodlust or having a hardened heart and going into denial or a state of shock or whatever, his heart was turned and he moved away. But now he's a terrorist, a Muslim terrorist in the middle of I mean, these were Muslims killing other Muslims, by the way. Muslims that weren't willing to be fanatic, they were being massacred. And that's what really jarred him. I was like, wait a minute, I thought we're supposed to be only killing Christians and Jews and the infidels, but why are we killing Muslims? Why are we killing each other? And so basically he had to flee, and he almost lost his life in the process. He had to flee with his family. Um, yeah, I don't know. You kind of hear those stories, and I mean, you got to wonder how can anyone with any kind of sound mind or any kind of heart want to defend Islam?
Well, especially when you're born into Islam, as a Muslim, you're told that basically that everybody else besides Muslims is a kuffar. If you're not a Muslim, you're kuffar, meaning you're an infidel. You're a kuffar. To them basically like an unclean swine. You're kuffar. So to them, if the extreme is killing you, it's just no big thing. And the Quran explicitly mentions killing the Christians and the Jews. And a lot of Muslims will go, well, that's just defensively. And I go, I read it. I know. It doesn't say if they attack you. It says cut off the arms and their legs. It doesn't say if they attack you, it says kill them. So when these terrorists go and kill Christians and Jews and just people in general, it's what the Quran tells them. Now the Quran does not tell them to kill Muslims. They're doing that themselves. Like I'm originally from Somalia. There's a terrorist group called Al-Shabaab. I don't know if you've heard of it.
No.
Biden was bombing them a couple of months ago, and all they do is they set off bombs in the middle of Mogadishu, and all the inhabitants of Mogadishu are Muslim, so they're killing people of their own. They're killing their own countrymen and their fellow Muslims. And I don't know what their excuse is, because usually the excuse is, we're killing the infidels. Yeah, see, but yeah, it is Allah's will, Mary, but Allah says to kill the Christians and the Jews, but they're killing Muslims too. So those guys are going a step further. They're killing everybody now.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what to say. It's just so insane. It's like you don't want to believe it. It's hard to believe. Like the cognitive dissonance, naturally kicks in. It's like it's trauma. Even hearing about what they're saying is so insane, so intense. You know what kills me is, the mass media portrayal. Like, there's been plenty of movies, especially in the later 20th century, on how um, the American military forces were doing all these horrible things when it comes to its war against Islam or its war against communism. Shame on the Americans for combating communism. But where is any of the mass media portrayals of what Islam has been doing through the centuries, over a millennia now, and does to this day worldwide?
Well, you try to mention it anywhere in the media, and you're immediately called an Islamophobe, and they'll shut you down. Even if you're stating facts, you're an Islamophobe. And Stalin killed millions and millions of people. Can't even compare to what the communists and the Muslims have did to what we're doing now. And they're actually doing it now. Look at the way they are treating the women in Afghanistan now, where they're not even allowed to go to school. Wow, look at that.
Yeah, just horrible. And so Biden actually bombed these people, huh? That's actually a surprise to me.
Yeah, he's been bombing them, yeah.
Oops, sorry. Trying to get out of here. Um, okay. So there's Muslims that you've said over and over again that there's Muslims that aren't aware of it. They don't even realize their own religion. Um, again, we have that in Christianity. We have again, I forget the exact expression. I think it's like the Sunday Christian or something to that effect. We have that, as we said. Ben Shapiro talked about the difference between a Jew and a Hebrew, and how a Hebrew is more of a commoner who doesn't really practice the faith. So you have that across different religions, where you have those that are lukewarm, as Revelations puts it, where you're not completely committed to their faith. So you're saying that Islam has, how did you put it? You had a label for the Muslims living
Lip,
in
lip service Muslims.
a lip service Muslims, right? So yeah, would you say that's? I mean, what could you speak to that a little bit? Like, what kind of impact does that have? So what comes to my mind, if I may interject? This is from the outside looking in. This is how I perceive it. It kind of reminds me of a very popular example of the Nazi regime and how, um, basically, how uh, there were people in Germany and Poland and so on while the World War II or pre-World War II activities were going on that weren't saying anything. They were kind of keeping their silence for whatever reason. The same thing. That's how communism was so successful, not only in Russia but in other Asian countries. So, I mean, is that fair? Is it kind of like this lip service Muslim, these, or even the Sunday Christian, or whatever the case may be, the Hebrew, as Ben Shapiro
Well,
put it?
you can call them lip service, but you could also call them Friday Muslims. They only go to the Friday prayer.
Okay.
Are you aware of the Friday prayer? It's when they
No.
on Fridays. So they don't pray the rest of the week. They don't pray the 5 times a day. They have no. There might be a bit of noise because my carers came. They don't have any real knowledge, and the biggest issue is they can recite the Quran, but they don't understand it because they don't understand Arabic. So they don't know what they're reading, and they're not bothered to look up the meaning. They just believe basically. So even my own siblings, my sisters, when I originally told them well, the sex slavery and pedophilia is allowed, they go, the first reaction was always, that's a lie. And then I show them all the evidence and they go, whoa. But then the hang up is they're afraid what if Allah, what if He is God though? That is the problem. What if He is God? What if we leave and He is God and we are leaving His, we are leaving Islam because of our moral objections? But what if these things are things that are actually allowed by God? Are we allowed to object to what God makes lawful? It's where the hang up is at the moment, right? And I'm trying to tell them that these things are not made lawful by God. So a lot of Muslims don't know these things.
Yeah.
And the reason why it's dying, it's because it's very difficult for it to survive in the West. Because when you live in the West, you interact with Christians, you interact with Jews, you interact with Hindus, and realize they're very nice people. You're around them all your life. Now, when you live back home, the only other people you're around are Muslim people, so you have no exposure to outside people. But when you live in the West, you see, oh, these are people just like us. They go to work, they love their families, they have their own beliefs. But when you live abroad, you're just told that they're disbelievers, you know. So the reason why it's like dying, people are getting used to the West, especially Muslims that live here, you know.
So yeah, I mean something that you touched upon earlier too, and is how Islam or the following of Islam is it's a fear-driven thing, where compared to Christianity, we're inspired by love. So but fear is an instrument of Satan. It's a very powerful instrument. I mean, that's the reason that all these fascist orgs, communism, Nazism, and Islam and so on. I mean, that's why they use it. How do you help people overcome that fear and open their hearts to the love of Christ?
Well, first I have to realize that, once they truly realize in their own heart that he isn't our Lord, right? That's when the fear goes away. My siblings are disgusted about regarding the pedophilia issue and so forth, and the slavery issue, but what holds them back is the fear that he actually might be God. And then if they leave, they might go to hell. Because you have to realize they believed this all their life.
Right.
My sister, she just turned 28 on the 28th of April. And the other one is 29. So they believed this their whole lives. And with me, it switched off immediately because what clicked for me immediately was that God could never allow for the harm of children in this way, for young, innocent, prepubescent children. I saw it as pure evil, and I just intrinsically I knew it couldn't come from God. But other people, it takes them a bit longer. They have to come over the hurdle that he's in God. And like Sister Mary wrote, Aisha was a big stumbling block for me in my whole life. This man that's supposed to be the best of men married a child and consummated that at 9 years of age. That was always a huge, huge stumbling block for me. You know, yeah, that was always a huge stumbling block for me. And Abba Himalaya had much kasardona. It was always a huge stopping block for me. And for a lot, so do you remember Nadia from yesterday?
No, I hate to say it.
She was the woman that you didn't see her face. Her name was Nadia, and she was an ex-Muslim, and she was talking about that her stumbling block was Aisha too. Her stumbling block was always Aisha too, because you see this man that's supposed to be your example, the greatest of men, and he sleeps with a 9-year-old when he's 50 plus.
Yeah. And amongst so many other things, I don't want to get too much into it, but I think the fact, and this is what kills me. I mean, maybe it's again the thing that they're not aware of it, but I guess it's because it's in is it in Tafsir or Hadith where Aisha talks about how he died, how Muhammad was claiming that he felt like his aorta was cut, and so isn't that a sign that he's a kafir, he's an infidel if he dies in that way, that where his aorta is cut?
Well, his aorta wasn't cut; he was dying from the poisoning.
Right.
He felt as if it was being cut.
Right.
But see, let me ask you a question. I'm just going to call you Serbic, all right?
Yeah, that's fine. Oh,
Yeah.
Nick, if it's easier.
I'll call you Nick then. So let me ask you a question, Nick. If he truly was the greatest of men, Allah's most beloved, would he have died in such a way? Like, would God allow his most beloved to die in absolute pain and misery? No.
Right.
He was being punished as the false prophet that he was by Yahweh.
Right, and that's another thing. Again, not even bringing the comparison of Christ's life and Muhammad's, but isn't it that Muhammad is, if he were this great prophet, this perfect example, wouldn't Allah preserve him and so on and so forth? But instead, again, the Hadith, Sahih Hadith, I'm sure of it. I can't cite which one, but it's there. You can do research, where he actually is thinking the place up. They try to keep the body around and all that, but he's turning color and he's like he's decaying, and so they bury him. So I mean, these are two very distinct things that are within Islamic faith that show that, well, he's not the perfect example, but quite the opposite. He's corrupt. He's by even Islam's own standards, by his standards that he created, he's evil. So how is he still considered a perfect example?
Well, see, they thought he was going to rise. That's why they're keeping him for 3 years. For 3 days, they thought he might rise like Jesus did, right? And see, I didn't even know that about myself until quite recently in Clubhouse. I was told that. It's because they thought he might rise, and so they kept him for 3 days, and then they finally buried him. You have to realize is that he appealed to the appetites and baser nature of men, right? It's a very lustful religion. You are allowed to have 4 wives, where where you can have whatever.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing. I'm just laughing when Mary just wrote. Yeah.
Whatever your right hand possesses, meaning slaves from conquest and via conquest, and then and then and the idea of paradise. Ismailo.
Yeah, I mean, Mary says, um, is he a sociopath? I would have to argue that sociopathy would be making excuses for him.
He was just
Um,
pure. He was just evil. And like Al-Tabari, so yeah, so no, he was evil. So even the idea of paradise. Sorry about that. I'm a living. The
that's all
idea of
right.
a paradise is where you get what you called hurul ain, like women of paradise, and they're explained as being full-breasted, and you have the strength of 100 men, and you can sleep them over and over and over again, and your heart, you can have whatever your heart desires, whatever you think of, right? Basically, their idea of paradise is a 15-year-old boy's wet dream. All the women, all the food, everything.
Or pervs, a 50 year
Yeah,
old pervs.
yes. For 15-year-old boys, the hormones pumping. But it's just, it's a very, very lustful religion, very, very lustful, and so that's what he did. He appealed to the baser desires of men, you know?
So here's the problem that I'm hearing over and over again is that generally Muslims are not aware, generally Westerners are not aware. And so they make those mass media arguments, the diabolically backward lies, they repair those instead, and which further enables all this tyranny, this fascism, and so on. So we need to inform them. We need to enlighten them with the truth. But the problem is this. Despite our efforts, we keep getting silenced and censored and so on. I could go on and on. I'm working on a project that's been, because there's so much evidence, it's been hard to coordinate. But a project that shows even video evidence of how far um, social media has gone to censor our voice, to keep it from being heard, um, which leaves only behind the diabolically backward lies, the deceit, the mis and disinformation, as they call it these days. So, I mean, how do we go about fighting this fight to inform people, to let them know, so that they're not being swayed, especially as Islam continues to encroach Kaffir lands, has migrated this historical mass migration into Europe from the Middle East and even the West, like U.S. and so on. How do we
First,
inform people?
first you have to combat the idea of Islamophobia.
Right.
They're just talking of Islam and
You're a bigot. I mean, automatically you say anything, automatically you're a bigot, or a
exactly.
conspiracy theorist, or all these
But the
mass media
minute, yeah,
labels.
so you have to combat the Islamophobic part first, because the minute you say anything about it, people immediately turn up. Oh, you're just a bigot. You know, you're a bigot. You're a racist. What are you? And you have to. So, have you heard of the religious text called the Reliance of the Traveler?
No.
It's a book that has the law, the Islamic laws, right? When it comes to the Maliki laws, that school of thought, it has all their laws, the jurisprudence. And then when you look at Amazon, yeah, you see the reviews, and a lot of Westerners go, "This is the true face of Islam." They're like, they're reading it, and they see all the laws, and they're horrified by it. So, people today,
Okay.
a lot
Um,
of people today are under the impression that Islam is a religion of peace. What I would tell people, I would give them sources to read, and find out for themselves. Because people don't tend to believe you if you tell them. You have to give them sources.
yeah. If you don't mind, would you go back? If you can't do it now, go back and later in on the stream, leave it in the comment section, or even send it to me in email so I can put it in the comment section myself, so people can have uh, access to all these references. I'll put some in the chat box. I'll go back and do as much as I can to make
Yeah,
sure people
yeah,
have access to
yeah.
this
The
information.
book is called Reliance of the Traveler.
Reliance of the Traveler. I mean, I have heard of it. I haven't read it, or I don't think I've seen it.
Yeah, it's got the laws of Islamic jurisprudence, and it shows you uh, the things that you're not allowed, the things you're allowed to do, and the things you're not allowed to do. And anybody who reads that will not come away with the conclusion that Islam is a religion of peace, which is a nonsense narrative that was invented after 9/11. That Islam is a
Yeah.
religion of peace.
Yeah, I mean, a whole reverse psychology thing there. I mean, and media did quite the number on us. At first we were scared of not only any foreigner, not even Arab foreigner or Muslim, foreigner, but any foreigner, period, or anybody carrying a bag. You know, anybody looks suspicious in any way, we're getting paranoid. So, but then there was a major overcorrection where all of a sudden you didn't want to be a xenophobe, and then that became an Islamophobe, and that became an excuse for their tyranny to continue.
Well, you can thank the Obama presidency for that. That they started that whole thing. Islamophobia and from what I've looked into, that all comes from their relationship with the Arabs and the oil. You have to keep them happy.
And opium.
And
Let's
yes,
not-
yeah,
yeah.
and from Afghanistan, yes,
And Turkey. Yeah.
and Turkey, yeah. So that narrative changed due to political reasons. They know how evil they are. They know that if Al Shabaab and Al Qaeda and ISIS all were powerful enough, that they would enslave the entire West.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't want to. Sounds like you might have other things going on. I don't want to keep you. How much more time
No,
do we have before?
as much as you need. They've already gone the cows.
This is what we need. Don't open that door. Believe me, I could go on forever.
No, believe me,
Um,
as long as you need. I'm
God
not
bless
gonna.
you, man. Thank you. All right, so let's get into politics then. In the West, we're conditioned to not talk about religion, not talk about politics, which is a very communistic mindset that they've integrated or ingrained us with. But something, as far as my focus, which is mass media and its influence, something that really stood out on my radar was in the mid 20 teens when uh, Barack Hussein Obama and Hillary Rodham Clinton were reacting publicly to to what was going on in Egypt and Syria, the Arab Spring, and without getting into the U.S.'s reaction, what we did, uh, I know different people have a different perspective on that. I don't agree with our reaction to what we did in those two nations at all, from my understanding. But in addition to that, both of them were going on publicly and saying, you know what, we need to do something about social media because social media is how they organize these things over there. And so we need to regulate social media. And lo and behold, a couple of years later, what's his face gets on before Congress. And then a couple of years later, he becomes even more powerful instead of being held accountable for anything. A Zuckerberger. I call him Zuckerberger, but So, I mean, I don't know. What is your understanding, your perception of that whole dynamic, the Arab Spring, um, social media's influence and regulation, or anything of that nature?
The funny thing is, though, it seems to me that social media regulation only goes one way. For some reason, the what you call the Ayatollah is on Twitter, and you get kicked off if you say men are men and women are women. So that's very interesting to me how terrorists and even the Arab government who killed Khashoggi because he spoke out against them are also on social media. So to me it's all tied to money interests, that they have some sort of financial interest in these people, so they allow them a place on social media. But if you're an ordinary person, they'll censor you, like they did all throughout COVID. If you just
Right.
say, have you read this study, or did you see what
Right.
this doctor said, or they go, COVID misinformation, blocked, blocked.
Right.
And then eventually you just come to the conclusion, well, they're behind big pharma, and that's why they're blocking everybody. And what really was scary during COVID was that the weaponization of social media apps. Like the government told them, get on board with the COVID narrative, and YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and all of them got on board with it, all of them, you know? And it just shows you that the government wields power over them as well. And now you have Elon he's taken over Twitter, but even that's not been as big of a success as I thought it would have been. You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Twitter, I mean, from onset, I mean, that's a tool that minimizes communication. So I don't understand why there's been so much resources spent on promoting that social media. So I mean, so here we are. We're talking about how you can inform so many that are ignorant of the facts of the reality, whether it's Muslims or Kathir or infidels. But we're also dealing with the censorship and being silenced. You can't even talk about a relatively non-lethal plague, you know, killing less than 5%, or pre-existing cures that are dirt cheap or you can make by yourself,
Mm.
that are proven, that have a high efficacy of even 100% according to some practicing doctors. But you can't talk about that. Instead, we got to wait about a year later to push with extreme prejudice and insanely diabolical backward dictates and detrimental, unhealthy protocols. Um, this lethal toxic serum, and nobody can talk about the adverse effects of that either.
Well, and you have a lot of people that got better with taking high doses of vitamin D,
Right.
getting the immune system up.
My own neighbor.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. And the issue with vitamin D is cheap to
Right.
make, and the vaccine isn't. So
Right.
you can almost always trace it to the money.
Almost. Yeah. But there's definitely something.
Yeah.
Again, when you go into media and how, for example, Marvel, Disney is the big thing now, and how that's kind of taking a nosedive. But despite they're losing money, they're still pushing the same propaganda.
Well, do you remember the Buzz Lightyear movie where they had
Yeah.
the gay kiss scene?
Yeah.
That tanked, and I'm going. Of course, it tanked. Buzz Lightyear is meant for kids.
Right.
Parents don't want their kids to see that, you know. And you just go. There's an agenda behind this. Because if you're truly marketing this for kids, right, you would not have that kind of scene. Like I was born in 1987. I vividly remember the first a Toy Story movie in 1995. There was no scenes of kissing or any affection because it's for kids.
Right. Well said.
Yeah. So what they're doing is obviously they're pandering to the alphabet mafia.
Alvin Mafia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know.
The
Yeah.
Baphomet crowd, really.
Yes.
The ball
Yes.
lovers.
Yeah. That's what they're doing. It's and also the thing with Hollywood is that there used to be a time where people used to get jobs on merit and skill, but nowadays when you watch new TV shows, it's like you gotta have a black person, you gotta have an Asian person, you gotta have a black person, gay person, you gotta have a transgender person, and I'm just going, I don't care the sex, the race, or whatever you want it to be. I just want it to be good. Can we go
Right.
back to it to being good?
Yeah. They don't care
Yeah.
about that anymore.
It, yeah.
So you reminded me as a European. Um, so I went, like I think it was in 2010. I attended a show called All the Rainbows of the Color of the Rainbow and the People in the Color of the Rainbows, or something like that. I don't know. So it was some long sentence that made no sense. That was the title of the show.
Yeah.
So there was a seat front and center available, and I took it. Boy, was I happy! I got the best seats in the house until the show started going, and the whole time the actors, the players, or whatever, they were literally looking right at me, yelling right at me the entire time, and all but pointing fingers. There he is, the European, get him! Like, oh my god! So yeah, at the end of the show, they included, well, the colors of the rainbows of the people and all that includes all the colors, including white. And they're kind of staring right at me. I'm like, yeah, you're preaching the choir, but meanwhile, here you are, browbeating me to death. um, so here we are a decade later, where now we've brought back colored people. Instead, we're not calling it colored people because it's not of God; it's of color. It's like some kind of scientific that kind of, yeah. which is extremely racist, but somehow now of color excludes Europeans. Right? So, and
Yeah.
I know I'm getting off topic, but we could bring it right back to Islam and what the Quran and Muhammad feels about this whole subject.
Okay. Unfortunately, on Dave Rubin calls it the oppression Olympics.
I love that.
Yeah, he calls it the oppression Olympics. So if you're black, you're at the highest.
That's hilarious.
When you're black, you're up there, right? You're the highest part. If you're black and gay, you're even higher. If you're black and somehow transgender, you're even higher. If you're black, gay, transgender, and disabled, you're at the highest. So it's just, and Muslims are part of that now because a lot of Muslims come from the Arab world and Africa and these places where they're darker than Europeans. So going against them is called, naturally being called by them racism now. And it's really weird because you see people like Apostate Prophet, David Wood, and these people getting bans on YouTube, getting strikes getting banned and strikes on YouTube, on Twitter, and all these places. And you see people like MohomoD Hijab and Ali Dawah saying that AP should be killed, and he's not getting any strikes. And then you have MohomoD Hijab cussing him and saying that his wife should be raped on Twitter, and there's no consequences. It's because they're shielding them.
Well, not even, yeah, it's not even an allowance or even an apology for it, but they're actually promoting them. I mean, my own channel, like I said, I couldn't monetize it, but yet they're allowing these, let's be frank, fake as Muslim fundraising orgs to advertise on my channel, and they benefit from that. YouTube does. Naturally, the orgs do. I mean, they're paying for advertising, but they're no doubt getting people to donate. But meanwhile, my voice is being silenced, and I can benefit from it. Not that I want to, and I wouldn't even allow it if I had a choice on my channel. But yeah, I mean, and again, I also posted a video before when I first started. I could only post 15-minute segments, and so I had an hour and a half long documentary about Islam and so on, and all these proofs. And the middle one, I think it was part 7. Ended up getting censored, which is kind of crazy. And the reason they told me that they flagged it was because I was promoting criminal or organization, criminal activity organization, or because I wasn't providing context, which was exactly the opposite of the truth. That actual segment was a segment where I included a video illustration of a comparison between the over 550 jihadi battles in Europe and the Middle East, compared to the religious crusades were a dozen and a half only, and only lasted a century and a half, where these jihadi battles are actually ongoing. So, and that was just the one segment. The other segment was a bunch of news reports, actual news reports of Islamic activity or terrorism, and some static news reports, for instance, in the middle. So that provides context and is obviously condoning criminal organization activity, and that's the reason they flagged it. And when I appealed it, they rejected the appeal. So there is no excuse of artificial intelligence there either. Yet the other stuff was left up, and it included all kinds of stuff, including stuff that is inflammatory, yet it's still up. Which begs the question, are they allowing certain stuff because they feel it will incite Muslims, it will anger them to want to destroy the infidels? I don't know.
So I don't know if they're coming from that viewpoint. The viewpoint that I see them coming from is because they are people of color. All right?
All right.
It's the same reason why I can call you white this, white that, white this, white that. If you say the same thing to me because I'm a black man, well, now you're a racist.
Right.
Right? And in America, they always go, well, you can't be a black racist because there's no institutional power. And I go, well, you're twisting the meaning. racism there. You know,
Right.
you're a racist if you hate somebody of a different race than you. It's simple. You know, interracial racism. And that's the reason why. Because if you look at Muhammad Hijab, right, he's a brown individual. So when he goes after somebody else's wife, well, that's fine. Let's say it's disgusting, but you know, he's a person of color. But if a white person goes after him, ooh, you know, and then AP is not even white, but he is against Islam, which I think in the view of social media overlords consider Islam the religion of brown people. I think, you know, I really do because they seem to defend it. And when you hear them talk about Christians, they always got all these white Christian and what's it called? What are they called again? Evangelical Christians.
Ah,
You
right.
know, yeah, evangelical Christians. You know,
The Bible thumpers that you see,
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah,
trope, the
yeah.
Hollywood trope, right? Yeah.
They're homophobic. They're transphobic. You know, they're so backwards in believing in God, and
Right.
you know,
So, forgive me for sounding dumb here, but I'm actually confused about this. I mean, frankly, they've played so many label games, it's hard to keep up with. But you've just kind of touched on something that I've been wondering about for a while. This whole black and brown people that I've been hearing lately, I've been wondering, well, what does brown mean? So brown is actually referring to Arabs?
Arabs, Hispanic people.
Okay. So
Yeah,
everybody else that's not white, that's not black, is
yeah.
brown. I got you.
Black
Okay.
black is people that have from African descent, like
Right.
myself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, sub-Saharan. Yeah.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
yeah, Somali. But
Yeah.
yeah, so it's the term they made up, and then they tried to turn Latin into Latinx. That didn't work
Right.
very well.
I don't know what that was. Yeah.
Yeah, that didn't work very well. And see, this is. I used to be. I was under the spell of the Democratic Party until 2021.
Okay,
I
I
was
got to hear this. What happened there?
well, I was conservative. The only thing that kept me underneath their thumb was the belief that the Republican Party was racist, because that's how they portray them, right? Then I watched a video, the Daily Wire. They do this video with this guy called Ari, and he was interviewing liberals, and he was asking them, "Are voter ID laws racist?" Right? And they go, "Of course it's racist. Black people don't know where to get an ID. They can't even find the DMV. They don't even know how to use the internet." And I go, "What?" And I was burning, right? And then
Yeah.
he goes and he interviews the black people in New York City. Excuse me, do you have an ID? And every single one of them has an ID. Because you have to have an ID, state ID to live in New York. Do you know what the DMV is? They tell them the exact address. Do you have access to the internet? Yes, I've got unlimited data on my phone here, and Wi-Fi at home and work. Right? And they go, what would you say if I tell you they were saying that black people don't have internet, can't get the DMV, don't even know how to use the internet? Well, they said it's ignorant and worst racist. Now, when I saw that, right, and Ben Shapiro calls it the bigotry of low expectations.
Mm.
Like that's what they think of us. The Democrats, they weren't supposed to be. They don't even know how to use the internet, Nick. Really?
Yeah.
Uh,
I
uh,
One of these talk shows, I can't remember which, but they made a funny thing about this. It's a stereotype, but it's the first time I heard it. And it's quite funny, and it's quite true actually. And they were picking on the California culture, this liberal culture, whatever it is. They love to have their three-legged dogs. You know, their token handicapped pet that can show off. And when look at me, how helpful I am. I've got this animal. Meanwhile, they're kind of dragging this poor animal through the street just so they can show off how virtuous they are. You know,
yeah,
it's a bit of a torture if you think about it, and blowhard torture, no less.
yeah,
Um, yeah. So, again, addressing this whole, I'm sorry, I'm just, it's hard to not physically react to all this insanity, this diabolically backward insanity.
mm,
But, all right, so we had a joke in seminary. You know, I tolerate you. I tolerate you very much. I tolerate you to death. So, isn't it quite revealing that they, them, their pinnacle is tolerance, where Christianity, tolerance is almost like an insult? Like, we love people, regardless. You don't have to define it and whatever. We love people, period. But that's something that completely escapes them. And they think they're being virtuous in the process by uh, reducing, truncating our love for others and our walk in life, and hypocritically slandering us in the process. Sorry, I went on the soapbox there, but
Well, it's true because, but also, it's not really tolerance. It's either see me as a woman or you're a transphobic, or see me as a man is transphobic. They are compelling speech from people now.
right,
Like, Jordan Peterson and how when they were making the law in Canada that you'd be fined for not saying, using the pronouns, and he refused and he lost his
right,
teaching career and all that. So what they're doing is they're compelling speech from people, right?
right,
And now they've gone so far to say that you don't even need anything done to you cosmetically. You, Nick, sitting right there with a beard, can say, I'm a woman, and not change a single thing. And I have to get along with you, along with it. Even though when I look at you, I see a man, full grown man with a beard in front of me, I'd have to go, how are you, Mary? Or how are you, Kathy? Or I have to use she and all that. And I just go, this is so ridiculous and backwards. And you're forcing me into it? No, you're not going to force me. I'm sorry, but you're not going to force me. And this is when they call you transphobic. And this is,
well, even yeah, it was about a decade ago now, actually, when in the United States, when they were talking about legalizing gay marriage for the sake of benefits, for the sake of tax breaks or whatnot. And I was in the South at the time. I was in the State University grad program. Um, and even there, the rednecks were like, I don't care. And I was hanging out. I was playing a little confession here. I was playing a local poker tournament, Texas Hold'em, without entry fee or anything. So technically, for me, it was not gambling because I wasn't investing any money into it. So that was my little guilty pleasure. Um, and I was pretty good at it too, by the way. Anyway. So yeah, I was hanging out with the lowest of lows. Trust me, people. I mean, we're talking drug dealers and whatnot. And in fact, they thought I was a narc because I wouldn't drink or anything, and so they were like really suspicious of me for over a year. They were giving me the business. Um, yeah, but even they were like saying, we don't care. You don't care if they have their benefits. But we all knew underneath it, you know what? This is just the first step. And sure, we are. I mean, here we are a decade later, um, where governments, mass media, and so on is actually pushing these alphabet psychos, which I think psychosis again is just making an excuse for them. I think is pure evil to actually hunt down Christians. Literally telling us or telling them to target us. So I'm sorry.
yeah,
There we
they
go.
literally had a. So remember what happened in March in the school in Tennessee?
Yes, I got an image up of that.
Yeah, when the woman just went on a spree and killed 6 children and 3 teachers, I believe. And I remember that weekend they were supposed to have a Trans Day of Vengeance.
Right.
Uh,
In
but
DC.
yeah, but then they stopped it because we can't do it anymore due to safety concerns. People might gonna come and hurt us. And I went, why are you playing the victim? You're the one. One of you just killed kids and teachers, and they having Trans Day of Vengeance. And then they show this whole like montage of some people that are on YouTube going, arm up, we need to fight back, we need to take our rights for ourselves. And I'm just going, whoa. And you don't want these people all hopped up on hormones, you know, and self-righteous anger going out there with guns and shooting people.
Right.
Because,
And this,
yeah,
sorry.
because I said it's going to be a massacre. First of all, they're vastly outnumbered. So I wouldn't do it if I was them. But why are they being protected when they're making outright threats? Why are they being protected? Why?
Right. So again, yeah, I mean, this is beyond protection. This is again promoting or prompting, not even promoting, but prompting. This is not coming from these alphabet psychos themselves. This is actually coming from mass media and government officials. I mean, there's a tweet where a government official, a secretary of a government official, is telling the alphabet mafia, as you said, to shoot Christians. Whenever they challenge you about your, whatever. So this is from the top down. I mean, and to kind of project that this is actually coming from the flamers. Sure, there's some flamers that are adopting this, that are that evil, but I mean, I've got quote unquote gay friends myself. One of them was a political activist, and I hope not. I've lost touch with him. I've got kicked off of Facebook, so actually, because I was complaining about pedophilia, Facebook kicked me off. Go figure. Um,
Facebook.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, I would imagine that not even he, as an activist, would be condoning. I'm sorry, would be encouraging uh, this kind of behavior. I would hope. I know for sure one of my other friend wouldn't, would be denouncing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, sorry.
So I continue.
Yeah, no, that's it. I mean, I think it's important that, and it's quite ironic how we somehow forgot this, but what was going around not too long ago was the idea of the Willie Lynch letters, which is a letter to slave owners in the New World on how to control your slaves, and that encouraged control through chaos. To pit slave against slave for stupid reasons, and while they're at each other, now you manipulate them however you want. So for some reason, again, it only applied to Africans, to Black Africans, not to everyone else. I mean, but that is exactly what we're being subject to, especially during or post or during, actually pre, during, and post coup 19 luck down. Um, but we've forgotten that. Instead, we're kind of, and myself included, we're kind of buying into this, us versus them mentality, whatever the case may be, whether it's female versus male versus black versus everyone else, or sexual deviant versus Christian, or whatever it is. They keep pushing. They keep pushing these things, whatever, just to create divisiveness, conflict.
Well, I don't know if you remember doing Joe Biden's his election run when he was being hidden away in the basement. He had an interview with the Breakfast Club. And when he went, he said to Charlemagne, well, if you don't know whether to vote for me or Trump, you ain't black. Meaning, black people are supposed to vote for the Democratic Party. See, the way the Democratic Party keeps power is simply by making black and brown people believe that Republicans are racist. Because if they didn't do that, a majority of black people are very conservative. All right, they're churchgoers. They believe in the family. They believe homosexuality is sin. Well, they're Christians basically, but they're holding them by making them believe that the alternative is racist, and they're for them. Like I told you, the reason why I could never be Republican is I thought they hated me because I was black, and that's what they make them believe when they go. You see Trump, you see the Democratic Party, you see the MAGA movement. They're evil, racist Nazis, but us, we love you. So they make this clear division because because black people, about 90% of black people do vote Democrat. If black people left, they would never win another election.
Yeah. Well, here's my political view. When it comes to politics, I'm non-denominational. I don't. I'm not, and I'm not lukewarm either. I'm not libertarian. Is that what they call it? So I'm not that. I'm not, right. I'm not left. The left would call me right. Even libertarians might even call me right, or even liberal. It just depends. But yeah, my thing is just Christianity. And that's it. How does it affect a Christian lifestyle, or Christianity in itself, or Christians?
Yeah, the reason why I could never be, I never lived in America, I'd vote for Trump. The reason why I could never be a Democrat is because they're against the family,
Right.
they're against our Lord. They what's it called? They stoke the fires of division and hate. They're
Mm.
for abortion. So they are for all these things that, as a Christian, I can't stand for. I just can't do it.
Yeah. Um, and they're openly against Christianity, traditionalism,
Yeah.
patriarchy. Yeah, everything. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're definitely the worst of the worst.
Well, in their view, the devil is a white man. Literally, the worst thing you can be is a straight white man in America right now.
Well, I used to call Barack Hussein Obama the white devil, so I don't know, whatever.
Now, according to the left right now, the worst man in America is the white straight male.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I've been saying for at least a decade, if not two. The white Christian man has been a target. And I just brought that up with my colleagues in the university, adults back in the day, and they all had a good laugh about it. But here we are, post Christian school shooting, and I have no doubt those same people will still be denying it.
Yeah, and these are the people that want, and these are the people that are saying, give up your guns for safety. No, this is the time where we got to keep our guns and maybe even get more to stay safe. Because if these people are going to come for us, you're not going to leave people defenseless.
Right. That's the
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah, and that's what they're trying to do right now. And I feel in my bones that transgender people attacking Christians, it's not over with. Might be another school, it might be another church, but I'm afraid it's going to happen again. And the governor of Tennessee did the right thing by instituting laws where schools in Tennessee have to have security, armed security. And I think every school should have armed security. I really do.
I mean, I hate to say it. I went to a school in Texas, military school actually, where we had the Bloods and Crips and so on that were a major issue, and all the racism. I mean, there we had everything really, but we also it was Hispanics, blacks, and whites that were three major groups that were hating each other. So we had violence regularly, um, and we had that security. You had to go through metal detectors and all that, which is a major drag. I mean, talk about changing your educational experience and your formation. But in the same breath, I'd rather be safe than sorry.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, this woman that attacked the school, she was wholly untrained, right? If there were trained security guards that ex-military or retired police officers, right, they would have taken her down very easily. And the reason why they go for schools is because schools are soft targets. It's a
Right.
building that contains our most vulnerable population, our children, and that is why they're going for these places.
Right. And I have my own theory about why children are being targeted on every level, physically, spiritually.
Let
You
me
know.
hear it, please. I'm interested. What is your opinion on that?
Well, I mean, just basically what you touched on earlier is just attack on the white Christian man. In essence, it's attacking. I mean, it's so back in the '90s, Oprah Winfrey was addressing the whole satanic church thing. There were some boys, I think it was in Virginia, I believe, Tennessee. I can't remember exactly, but somewhere in those southern parts where they were actually choir boys of all things, but they were Satanists and they were molesting, they were abducting, molesting, and killing, murdering little boys. And one of them was even cutting off. Forgive me for being graphic here. For those that don't want to hear this, please tune out for a couple of seconds. I'm gonna be very, very disgusting, just to tell you how extreme these Satanists were. The victims, the child victims, they would actually cut off their private parts and keep them in a jar.
What?
Yeah. So, and Oprah Winfrey was covering this, and what came out in those interviews, I remember, was the idea of the Satanic Church's agenda, its ultimate goal, which was uncreation. And that's something that I keep saying over and over again, so it can stick into people's heads, because of this. Because I mean, what we're seeing taking place in media. Yeah. Sorry, Mary. Sorry for sharing that, but it's quite
Yeah.
evil. So it's one thing. Forgive me. Let me just express this. I'm on a soapbox, but I want to finish this up because I think people need to hear it. Whoever may hear this. Um, yeah, it's one thing to lie. Okay, lying, deceit. That's horrible. That's one thing, and that is a sin, absolutely. But it's another to be diabolically backward, to do the exact opposite, or to push the exact opposite. And to me, that's along the lines of this uncreation. And so, what this uncreation is, yeah, they want to destroy the home, Mary. Yeah, it's what they want to do with this uncreation is to undo God's commandments, to do the exact opposite of what Scripture teaches, and so they can uncreate things, so to speak, through that. So again, it's not only sin; it's the exact opposite. Night is day, light, and so on and so forth. Left is right. And that's exactly what we're seeing in media. What's being pushed, the extreme opposite of reality. And unfortunately, we're so plugged in to our devices. I mean, over 12 hours a day. We're so isolated too, post Q19 lockdown, that plays a major role of our perception of reality. So reality has become VR, become an illusion. Um, yeah. So that's why I don't know. I mean, basically, I can't remember why I got on this rant, but something triggered this whole discussion. That
We were talking about kids.
thank you.
Yeah.
So that's it. I mean, the reason they're targeting children is because Scripture says. I mean, God puts them on the highest pedestal. He takes his population, says, "This is who you have to be like." And woe unto those who harm even a hair on their head. It's better that you tie a millstone around your neck and jump into the sea. Like, whoa, that's pretty graphic. That's pretty intense. And that's who they target on every level: abuse, molestation, corruption, and murder.
You know the worst thing I'm seeing nowadays? It's parents themselves posting this LGBT thing. I see parents going, saying their child as young as 2 years old is transgender, and they go, "Whoa, a 2-year-old doesn't even know what that means." What are you saying? Oh well, he was playing with his older sister's dolls, and they go, "But that's what a 2-year-old does, or 3-year-old." And is the parents, if the parents are doing this for attention, because they realize if they said my child is transgender, the news cameras come, and all of a sudden you're special. And unfortunately, some parents will use their own children for their own gains. Because even my cousin right now is 11 years old, and he has no real concept of what gender dysphoria is. So how does a 2-year-old understand it?
Yeah. I'm sorry I'm laughing. It's just all this nonsensical labeling and constructs they come up with to justify their hideous backward evil. It's so insane. It's practically comical. I mean, I don't know how else to react.
But according to them, we're the evil ones. We're the
Right.
homophobes. We're the transphobes. We are the ones that should be removed from society.
Yeah. Forgive me. This is supposed to be about you, but I'm doing all the talking here. But now you just triggered something else that it's important to me. It's a trend that I see going, and so I want to share it if I may. If I may get on the
Of course,
soapbox.
I'm very interested in this conversation. Keep it going, please.
Thank you. So yeah, you touched on it. My biggest fear, and we're already seeing it. I mean, even in my own acquaintances who are Christian, yet they're pushing all this, like the baby killing, the abortion, as Mary said, and all these things that you mentioned earlier, that they're justifying it because mass media is giving them this justification. Meanwhile, those people that are pushing all these evil things, obviously they're evil, but they don't see it, are pointing fingers at us and saying that we're the evil ones because mass media is conditioning them to, is prompting them to do that. So we're quickly reaching an age where, again, it's diabolically backward. Bad is good and good is bad. They're being called the Christians, or we're being called the evil ones, and they're hunting us down. Now they're being prompted to hunt us down. Hey, take up your guns, alphabet psychos, and shoot them down if they say anything. If they say anything, shoot them. That's the mass media dictate and the government top-down prompting.
Yeah, it's like Mary said, right? This is against God because I was reading something yesterday, right? Because I've been in Christianity now for a little over a month, and I'm still very new to it, still very freshly into the scriptures. But I was reading yesterday that Satan is incapable of creation, right? As an angel, he can't have offspring. So one of the things that he hates about us is that we are capable of having children. So the king of this world and the prince of evil and lies is ruining the young, the children, right? And he's using their own parents, the schools, the media, the government to do it. And even though God created us, men and women, we created them, men and women created them in our image, we created them, male and female. And he's going against that Satan now, going against that. And he's perverting our young because he hates the fact that he can't have children of his own, that we can. It's one of the reasons why he hated Adam as well. And he's going against them, our youngest population, and twisting their minds against God. Basically, he's saying, well, Christians are saying that God made you a man or a woman in the Bible, right? They don't want you to be transgender. Well, you just turn them against God right there. And then you go, your parents are conservative, evil, loving, they're MAGAs.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing. It's just so silly.
They're hateful, right? They're Trumpers and they're against you. Turn them against their parents. And now they go, well, the school is here for you. The government is here for you. Like, we'll give you the medication. We'll allow you to lop off your breast or your penis or whatever. So what Satan is doing is he's turning them against their religion and their parents too. And now you're having schools. If you do you know Lips of TikTok? I'm pretty sure.
Yes, I've heard, but I don't follow, but I've heard, references.
So Lips of TikTok, simply what she does is she takes these crazy TikTok videos, and she posts them on Twitter for the world to see. And they're having apoplectic fits going, what are you doing? And she's going, all I'm doing is I'm reposting your videos. I'm not editing them, I'm not changing them. These are your own words. Now, what they did is they doxed her and found out where she lived and who she was, because she was never on camera, right? And all she was doing was she was exposing teachers that were saying on camera that when we call the parents, we call the kid, we call him Mike, but we in school we call him Amanda. Basically, they've allowed the child to transition at school behind the parents' back, right? And because of COVID-19, a lot of parents found out what the kids were being taught when they're being homeschooled. You've seen this whole thing with parents coming to school board meetings, right? And finding out that pornographic material in the kids' libraries.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and all that happened because of COVID. Parents saw what the kids were being taught when they were being homeschooled. And I'm thankful they finally saw that. And they found all these things out. Because how dare you transition somebody else's child without their permission? Well, even if I think no parent should ever allow it. But the parents should know about this, right? But they're hiding it from the parents too. So basically, it's an agenda against God and parents as well. If the parents are conservative, that is, or Christian.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, it's definitely an attack on the home, on traditionalism, on the family structure, on Christianity, by extension. So, and this is something that's been going on for generations. I've got all kinds of anecdotes and so on about that, but also, the name of the actress escapes me. Drew Barrymore, Hollywood royalty, Barrymore. She did a movie when she was a kid, when she was being molested, by the way, called Irreconcilable Differences. This is what she did after E.T. And that was basically a child that was unhappy with their parents arguing, and so she takes them to court to get them to get a divorce so they can stop arguing. I know. Ironically, growing up, that was one of my favorites because I had a crush on her, for one thing. But yeah, so, but back then, you hear so much of that kind of rhetoric, you don't really know how absurd it actually sounds, and so you end up buying into it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're seeing today. Like we're seeing, I mean, basically the government has taken control over our children. We've even seen people, parents, I should say parents, that are going to school boards and have been fighting back because social media has encouraged them to do so. And in some cases, we see authorities pushing back and prohibiting parents from being able to do that, which is insane. This is all happening in the U.S. So Europe, I mean, it's a whole other ball of
Yeah.
wax.
Well, actually, the president of France, he said that whole leftist nonsense, he said, keep that in Europe. We don't do that here. He said, we're liberal, but we're not leftists.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, that's what he said, basically. But maybe that transgender nonsense will reach them as well. Do you remember, Governor Glenn Youngkin? He had an election.
No.
He's the governor of Virginia. I told you I follow politics quite a bit. And he won his election basically because his opponent said parents should stay out of the school. And parents should not concern themselves when we teach kids. That's the teacher's job. And everybody went, well, you just lost the election right there.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, he lost all the suburban women when he said that, all the mothers, right?
Good.
Yeah, and then Glenn Youngkin went, well, no, no, no. These are the parents' children. The school might teach them, but you're not the guardian, you're not the legal guardian, they're not your children. And he won by a landslide, and he was right. But it's such so evil. So Matt Walt's movie, right? What is a Woman?
Oh, no.
So he's a documentary. What you can download as well. What is a Woman?
Okay.
And he goes to universities, and he even goes to one of these surgeons, right? Dr. I think Brown is her name is, and he asks them a simple question: what is a woman? Right. And they keep giving the same answer. A woman is somebody that identifies as a woman. And he goes, well, you're not giving me an answer. And he just goes all over asking them. And then the only person, then finally he asks an old man, and he's talking to this old man because this old man he has a Star Wars collection shop, and there was this transgender guy outside of his shop, dressed as a woman and all that, and
Sorry.
a counselor, and he wouldn't call him a woman. And he said, well, you're a man. See, a man is standing in front of me. So he interviews this guy, and he says, I've been speaking to all these people, but I don't know what a woman is. How do you know? Well, he said, well, they look like men, and what do you know what a man is? And he goes, cause I have a penis.
Right.
He says the D word, but it's
Right.
just this old man just cuts through all the nonsense. And you have these people go, whatever they identify as, and you just go, you know what a woman is, you know what a man is. You're just too afraid to lose your job.
So it's funny. I just did a search on the documentary, and usually when you do a movie title, the first thing that comes up is International Movie Database and so on. Couldn't find it. I went down the list. Finally found a trailer for the documentary down the list. But anyway, so I'll definitely check that out. Thanks for sharing. And it's crazy that has to even be a conversation, or even never mind a reason for debate. So I'm laughing. It's just so crazy.
It is crazy because it's like what Mary said. It really is Satan, this riling these people up and lying to them and making them think they're in the right. And these people, so a child can't drink till they're 21, can't smoke till they're 18, can't drive till they're 16 in most places, right? But they can have a mastectomy at 16. Some of them are only 16.
Or younger in some places.
Or younger, yeah. And you go, well, you can have parts of you removed, but you can't drink till you're 21. Like, where's the logic in that?
Yeah.
And it's just a really, Like when I was a Muslim, I never really thought of it that way. But see, he's right. It really is Satan pushing these people. And you know, he's the prince of lies. So he actually thinks that they're in the right.
So I'm glad you said that. So recently, speaking of school boards and activity, there was a lot of parents that were pushing, they're fighting back with all this sexualization of children, and I guess there was some they were getting some results because the trend started to grow, but it wasn't really as mainstream, or it could be wrong, but at least it seemed like it to me. It wasn't really as mainstream until a group in Dearborn, Michigan, got active and started voicing their concerns. Do you have any idea who I might be referencing when I say that? Dearborn, Michigan, Dearborn, Michigan, and their fight against this uh, top-down pedophilia.
No.
Okay, so it was actually a group of Muslims. They were suddenly got vocal, and all of a sudden they became heralded. Like, look, Islam actually cares about our children. What? So, um, so when the Christians were doing it, they're psychos. They're fanatics. They're extremists. They're and so on. But when the Muslim groups did it, all of a sudden, look at the perfect representation of humanity.
Yeah. Um, the thing is, though, like these. So, if I'm gonna be honest with you, right? These dawah guys, like Ali Dawah said that, he said in Speaker's Corner on camera, that if his daughter turns 9 years old and she's had a period, he will let her get married. Now I think he's lying because every single Muslim that I know would not allow their child to get married at 9. And usually the ones that get married at that young in the Arab world and Pakistan tend to be the kids where the parents need the money, right? Poorer children, unfortunately. But the fact that he said that is disgusting. And these people don't know, because they don't know about Islam is, these people don't even realize, like I see these anchor women talk on the news about how Islam is a religion of peace and we're racist, Islamophobes for saying otherwise. And I'm watching this woman and I'm thinking to myself, do you know how much Muhammad loved raping blonde-headed and blue-eyed women? They loved it. The Ottomans, it was the Ottomans' favorite, was capturing blonde-headed and blue-eyed women. And I'm thinking, if Islam ruled right now, some guy named Abd would be the slave of some guy named Abdul. So you don't know what you're talking about. These people don't know that if Islam had the strength, let's say, for example, Saudi Arabia and Iraq, so Iran and all these countries, they went together, and magically they were granted the power of the US and Russia and China combined, and they enslave us. First of all, I'd be killed, and you'd be killed too because you're a man, and the older useless women would be killed too, and they would keep the children and the beautiful and the women, right? So these women don't understand what Islam is. So when I hear them say the religion of peace, I actually laugh out loud now, because they do not know what would happen to them under Islam. And
Yeah.
they don't know, and they'd have to walk around. Slave women are not even allowed to be proper dressed. They can cover from their navel to their knee, but they would walk around they would walk around bare-chested in Arabia because they were not allowed to be dressed.
Right.
So they don't understand Islam. That's the whole issue. And I don't know how they have rehabilitated the image of Islam to this degree. It really is a trick of the devil, right? How he made Islam the religion of peace. It's laughable.
Yeah, there's some couple of good points there, but let me address Mary's point. And I've got to say, I've got to unfortunately end the stream in a few more minutes, maybe 5 more minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, she does make a good point. I mean, we're all God's children. Maybe God can use even Muslims. Yeah, I mean, I'll leave that to you as a question. How do you feel about that?
Well, I feel like God is using Muslims right now. God is using Daniel Hakikatu and his debate with aspiring philosophy to show people the evil of Islam and their pedophilia. And he's showing Ali Dawah and Muhammad Hijab with a video with secret wives. So Muslims are exposing themselves all day, every day on YouTube with no prompting from us. So I do believe that is from God, because people can see the video and they can go, whoa, you can sleep with a kid as young as that age? This is Islam? No, thank you. So it's being exposed every day now, thankfully, because of the internet, and they're doing it themselves. So they're helping us. They don't mean to help us, but they are helping us.
Accidentally
Yeah.
doing the right thing.
It's like Mary said, he's a blessing in disguise. He really is. Thank God for Daniel Hakika too. Keep doing it, man.
Yeah, so jumping subjects here about altering your body, whether it's substance abuse or changing it. Mary makes a good point here. Like anyone is juiced up, basically, who's got the testosterone flowing through their body unnaturally, natural amounts, whether it's too much or if it exists at all when it shouldn't. Yeah, I mean that's gonna alter someone's mood and drive them. I mean they call it raging, roid rage for a reason, right? So yeah, I mean I don't know. I don't know if there's anything that needs to be said of that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, it's the drugs combined with these people are already, not all of them, but some of them do have genuine gender dysphoria where they believe
Right.
they're born in the wrong body. So they already have a mental issue right there, right? And
Right,
you
but
add,
sorry, let me interject. Yeah, absolutely, and you're correct. The thing is, or at least it used to be, I don't know, with the chemical stuff going on these days, God knows. But that percentage was so small that, I mean, you can even see it with your own eyes in the population that it was quite insignificant. The people that are actually struggling with this gender identity because of physiology.
yeah, Abigail Schreier did a book on this, and she came to the conclusion that it's become popular to be transgender now.
Right.
That the people with actual gender dysphoria is a very small percentage. That percentage hasn't risen, but now that those people are being praised, lauded, put on a pedestal, you have more and more young people come out. But then you're also starting to have more and more. You've heard of detransitioners?
No.
Detransitioners are young people that are a group of people that are regretting their transition, and some of them haven't had any surgical intervention, but for some of them it's too late, and they realized it didn't make their lives any better. So what was the topic again? I completely forgot that.
We're talking about how real it actually is. The whole.
Oh yes. So it's a very low percentage, right? Very, very low. But let's say this shooter was one of those people, for sake of argument. They've already got a mental illness, but then you add roid rage to that with the testosterone, and then they have a specific hatred for Christians, and because we tell them God created Adam and Eve. He didn't create Adam and Eve and Steve, male and female, and you're either one of the two, even genetically. So you have this person mentally ill, hopped up on drugs, just rage feeling through them. And what do? Oh, well, there's a Christian school right here. Let me go and kill them. And it's apparently the Christian school that she attended as a child, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I heard that too.
Yeah. And she comes from a Christian family, which bugs the mind as well. And her mom's Facebook, Candace Owens was reading her mom's Facebook posts. Her mom always thanking God and all this thing. So she comes from a Christian home as well. Yeah.
Well, that's why we say there's no room for libtartation or whatever you want to label it, leftism, liberalism. There's no room for it in Christianity because it's so anti-Christian that you can't have both. You can't serve two masters.
Well, this is what I want to say to Christian people, right? It might be difficult but for the love of God, homeschool your kids,
Amen.
or send them to a Christian school where that doesn't happen. But
Amen.
don't put them in public school
Amen.
where these leftists have free reign.
I
You
taught
know?
in public schools. I agree with you 1,000%. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So I've got a couple more minutes. You mentioned earlier something about the reality of Islam being 90% true. Some reference to that.
Okay, so there's a sheikh on YouTube called Wasim Yusuf. Where would I write this?
Um, yeah. So,
I can spell it for you if you want.
or you can just send it to me email, and I'll put it in the description afterwards.
I'll send it to you an email. And this guy basically talks about how he's hated by scholars because he's a scholar, he was taught by them. But they hide 90% of Islam from the Muslim population, from the lay people. Because if they knew the rules regarding slavery, basically he says Islam's biggest problem is that they can't put themselves in other people's shoes, for example, right? He said, how would you feel if you're a Muslim and the Christians are coming and they kill your father and everybody else and they rape your mothers and sisters and then they expect you to be a Muslim? You never expect you to be a Christian, you'll never be one. So why do we expect the same of Christians, right? And he's saying that slavery should have no part of Islam. It does, and I would say to this guy, leave Islam. But basically he says that 90% of Islam is hidden from the general population because they would leave Islam in droves if they knew. And a lot of people would leave if they knew. And a lot of people are leaving now because the biggest mistake they made is they allowed their religious text to be translated and put online. Now you can just go on sunnah.com and find any hadith you want. Write child bride and everything about Aisha comes up. Write breastfeeding and it comes up how you can breastfeed. You can actually, a woman can breastfeed her brother-in-law. So he becomes a marham to her. A marham is a man that you can't marry. So Sheikh Albani says, if you want your wife to be comfortable around your brother, you could let her breastfeed him, and then he's like he'll become marham, meaning a person that you can't marry. And you go, what do you mean my wife breastfeeding my brother? And it's just disgusting. But now they've put all that on the internet so you can search it for yourself. And I think that's the biggest mistake they made because all these things used to be in Arabic that wasn't available to us.
Yeah. So basically, the truth is our sword. The truth will set you free. It's scriptural.
Yes, and they made the mistake of putting the truth out there to the world.
So let me ask you, and we're going to get cut off. The stream's going to end in about a couple of minutes on its own. Just a heads up, if we get cut off abruptly. But the meaning of your name, you're Lucien, but you mentioned your other name earlier. What it actually means and why you changed it to Lucien.
Well, the reason why I changed to Lucien is that I don't want to be a slave of Allah anymore. But I was told Fatah, right? That it means. I was told that it means the conqueror, slave of the conqueror, right? It's a lot of Muslims, they have this name like Abdul Rahman, slave of the merciful, So a lot of Muslims' names are just slave of, and then Fatah is one of Allah's 99 names. And as a Christian, I don't want that name.
Yeah. All right. So, any closing thoughts? And let me, before you say that, let me ask people to pray for Lucien and his family, who are still struggling to find their way to Christ. So, what would you close us off with? What would your advice be to everyone?
Well, I would say to Muslims out there that if your morals clash with Islam, leave that and come to Christianity, where we not have those moral issues. Where you're not allowed to beat your wife, you're not allowed to be pedophile, where you're not allowed to put people into slavery, where God created it out of love and He loves you, and He died for you on the cross because He loves you. So come to a God that loves you, and leave the evil in Islam and Muhammad. because there is no Allah. It's all Muhammad. You're a pagan, basically. Yeah.
All right. Well, Lucien, thank you, and I'll be looking forward to having you again in the future. Thank you very much. God bless you. And keep on
Anytime,
keeping.
brother. Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Thank you.